All right. Greetings from the Dark Continent. Conscious Caracal here, or Adams Van Sale. And tonight I have a guest, a recurring guest that has been on the show quite a few times, Mr. Odin Moja, my co-host over at the No Script Show as well, the founder of the No Script Show, and then also a South African Twitter meme extraordinaire and his latest label, Transracial Avatar. So So tonight we're just going to have a nice chat about all things relevant going on in South Africa today. What is the talk on the Twitter streets? So, Dumela Lekai, Mr. Odin Moja.
Hey, Morena, retang na Lekai.
Getting. All right, man. So, Odin, I think we'll now go into the context a little bit, but just some thoughts from your side and how things have been going this week. I see you've had a nice big injection of new followers there on social media, it seems.
Yeah, that was unexpected. All I did was post a selfie. I mean, honestly, I will say I want to highlight some of the memes that were posted in a minute. But yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to go from the top, from my perspective of what happened?
No, man, I think we can. So I'm going to get there's that excellent article that was written on the whole incident. So I'm going to get that on the screen.
Oh, the rational standard one.
Yes. And then we can go through it because it's got everything. I think that'll be the best course of action. So let's see here. All right, there it is. So yeah, so this article was written right after this incident. It's called Bianca van Wyck's tweet encapsulates the inherent bigotry of white saviorism. So my first thought here is just, Bianca, you need to remember, you might be feeling a little bit of a glow of the fact that you're famous now, making the news. But remember, fame is fleeting, but the internet is forever. So let's see again what's going on here. So just for context, this was the profile. Actually, very funny that she says no prejudice in the profile itself. But anyway, so she responded to, and this was last week, she responded to Adam Roots, the deputy CEO of AfriForum, when he released a link for AfriForum's new mini documentary on farm murders. She posted this reply. I'm not going to read it all. It's basically just her going into some non-arguments and pretty much just making up a stink because she doesn't like AfriForum. And then Mr. Moja here in studio right now in near HD for people that still doubted, replied with this banger. Do you want to read it in your own voice?
I said to her, "Hi, Bianca. AfriForum helped my kin in the Baralong tribe when nobody else would. I also put 10,000 Rand bounty out for anyone that can help bring the farm murderers of Jules Staub to justice. What have you done? P.S. Speaking of 2010, MySpace called It Wants Its Lame Style Avi's back."
So you couldn't help yourself there at the end, of course. But here then, so then you got actually the response that made her name trend on South African Twitter, and it was where she said, "Your kin, WotanZA," with laughing emojis. A white guy with a black guy as an AVI has no room to talk. Focus on getting the lingo down before handing out advice, white boy. So first, just off the bat, pride genuinely goes before the fall. And we can definitely see very much a prideful response here. So sure of her cause, so sure that she's got him. We got him.
Got him.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
We got it.
And so her jubilation and her pride only lasted, I don't know, even a few minutes or a few seconds. Because then you replied with this absolute banger, body slam from the top rope, selfie.
Handsome AF, just got to say.
Well, that's what I told you over WhatsApp. I said you just wanted an excuse to post a fresh new selfie, sporting that lockdown stash. So then she still didn't buy it. She said, "Nice try, but I did a little homework, and your YouTube channel speaks fluent white right." So
which is weird because there's a million pictures of me on my YouTube. But anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, it's. I just find it very baffling that she says she's done her homework, but she's definitely one of those cases where she passed with 30% with her homework, if that is the quality of homework she does. Definitely a 30%. So, and then basically it escalated even more to the point where she was becoming such a laughing stock. People were mocking her absolutely mercilessly that she made this half-hearted apology where she said, "My apologies, I got this wrong. Wotan is a black guy. My assumption was based on his podcast and the company he keeps." Just a reminder, this
I did reply to that.
I'll get to that now. I think it's in the article as well. Just a reminder, this is the woman that has "please no prejudice" in her bio in very Shakespearean fashion. I don't think your reply is here in the article, Odin. If you can just enlighten us on what that reply was.
Okay, so my reply was first of all, I love that the thing that hooked her was me using the word kin. Do you know how many times Snoop Dogg uses the word kinfolk? Honestly, like the word kin was some tip off to her. Like the word kin is the fucking mayonnaise of words that black people can't stand its taste in our mouths. It's like, kin? Like, come on. Anyway.
I'm just imagining her sitting there and she sees that word and she's goes all CSI and she's like, enhance that image.
Stop. Yes. So yeah, my reply was, I can't find it, but basically I said that I am part of the Bakatla clan and Baralong are my kin. For those of you who don't understand, words like Bafokeng, Bakatla, Baralong, it's sort of like, I don't know, like Scotsman with like McTavish or whatever. In Setswana culture, your family comes from one of 8 major great tribes, each of which has their own totem and whatever that we can get into later. And so that's why I said the word.
Something a bit broader than a clan, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's more broad than a clan.
But a bit more broad,
yeah. So yeah, that's why we use the word kin. And I said, educate yourself. And I gave I think there was a link to the actual Wikipedia article about the clans or greater clans. It's actually not totally bad. I don't know who put that article up, but they clearly knew their stuff. So
maybe just a little bit of interesting trivia. So every one of the clans, as you've told me, has like a symbol, an animal symbol.
Yeah. It's like your totem and your correct. Yes.
And the Barulong are the kudu.
I believe, yeah, Barulong is kudu. Yeah.
But yeah, dude, so seeing as we've now done a little bit of a catch-up for those that did not witness this absolute Twitter glorious moment, what are your thoughts just from now in the aftermath, now that you've been able to sip your whiskey very, very smugly and kind of come out on the other side with 2 scoops of ice cream?
2 scoops of ice cream. Shout out to my fellow Motswana Pule over there.
He says they're 2 white men based.
Shout out to well, a couple of things. Firstly, shout out to Clockwork for the cartoon he made. And
no, but yeah, you continue.
And shout out to the Goose for revealing my true Nazi nature, because he made this. He went
all out. Yeah, he went all out with the Photoshop skills.
A whole like 5 hours in MS Paint. Should have just had me like Sieg Heiling in the middle of it. That would be amazing. Yeah. My thoughts on this.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm not really surprised. Good for Windsor not there. Thanks, but yes, I take pride. I did go to boarding school, so yeah. I see you two are a man of class. Yes, that's the cartoon.
He nailed you in the cartoon, dude. Nice representation.
Yeah, solid representation.
With the cigar and all, with the no scripture merch even.
Yeah, with the merch and everything. I mean, my first thought is that I always knew that like the far left white liberals were holier than thou, but I never thought that I would personally have to deal with it. So it was just amazing. And I knew some people would be like, yo, spicy when I posted my selfie, but I didn't realize how many people were just going to take this lady to town, like absolutely just wrecked her. Like, Yeah.
They smelled blood in the water, man. It was I mean, it's such a dunkable offense.
It's not even like the thing is about her is that is the walking punch like the thing is about her is her assertion is that I was faking being a black guy. I'm like, have you seen my stream, my Twitter stream, or even watched 10 seconds of my uh of my podcast? It's so obvious that that's not the case. Her whole thing was, again, just the way maybe she listened to like 3 seconds of our podcast and then she heard how well I speak English. But then again, that just makes it worse because then that's, again, the soft bigotry of low expectations. Yeah. And her apology, I actually quoted her apology and she said, I'm sorry, he does, it's just from the company he keeps his podcast. Imagine if I had said, yeah, I'm sorry I beat my wife, but honestly, she deserved it. Like, can you imagine? Yeah, can you imagine what would happen?
Yeah, it's the exact same excuse of when you hear someone is beating their wife, and you say, "Well, I heard she burned his food once, so there's something there." But anyway, yeah, dude. I see Clockwork is here in the chat. Very well done with this cartoon. I think it encapsulates it perfectly. And yeah, I think the biggest thing to come from this is just the absolute Twitter storm in regards to, I mean, it's not even a contest. Not even the people in her ideological pen wanted to stand up for her, it seemed. But it's this arrogance that comes from an echo chamber where you become so certain of your views. You're so certain. You're not even just certain that the people you disagree with are racist. You are certain as well that the ones that are not white are definitely fake accounts. I mean, that's the textbook case of ideological possession. And I don't think I think the certainty that we saw with which she made this assertion was real. I think she genuinely thought for certain she got him. She's going to expose this guy. And she did her research, Odin. I'm never going to hire her to do any research for me. But yeah, it's didn't you find it particularly insulting that she didn't even recognize your lingo? And she's like, oh, you should get the lingo down first. I'm like, yo, man.
What?
You're talking to the guy that's been temporarily suspended from Twitter twice for using the N-word.
Exactly. I used the N-word to another black person while I still had my Abby, and I got suspended.
I mean, but I think that's why we got all this dunking and this absolute just frenzy of people mocking her, was the fact that it's so easy. It's just a fucking dunk, dude. There's you don't even have to think about it. And I think that's why we got this reaction. But yeah, man, I mean, you went from last time you and me saw each other, you were at 1,800 followers, and now you're already double that. So that's a 100% increase. Very well done.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'll try follow some of y'all back. But yeah, it was quite amazing.
I think you're a double, or you're at 2,600. I might be remembering.
I'm not sure exactly.
2,600, then it's 50% increase, which is still pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's
becoming moving up from C tier to B tier Twitter celebrity.
I think I'm still at like F tier or something. Yeah, I'll get there one day.
All right, but yeah, firstly, I just want to say as well, thank you everyone that's tuned in. The chat's already full of banter. Really, really thoroughly enjoying it. Just gonna take this off the screen. So yeah, but Odin, the other thing that I wanted to ask you in regards to this whole thing is, have you sensed a shift in regards to people just becoming fed up with this type of ideological position and attitude from people that have just become completely infatuated with their ideology and can't see straight or even see reality as it plainly is? Do you think there's some type of shift that's starting to happen where people are becoming a bit fed up with it?
I think so to a certain extent, but I also think that there's still a lot of people like, I don't think Bianca's going to change her ways because of this. I think she's going to limp back to her support group and lick her wounds and be like, okay, maybe not that guy, but the next time I'll catch a fake black profile. Like, what? Why? And also there's still a lot of people supporting her. I mean, the thing that surprised me the most was people coming out. I mean, there's people like Ian and the Goose and all of them. They're doing good work. But then there was Jimmy. For some reason, Jimmy, the guy from Polytrix, who is for some reason who purports himself to be a centrist, but was for some reason absolutely willing to die on the Bianca hill. Like, why, dude? Why in the hell? Firstly, what kind of centrist are you? And secondly, bruv, I don't know if your girlfriend's seen this, but she's way hotter than Bianca. And if I were you, I wouldn't be simping this hard for a lady that's not my girlfriend. But anyway, let's see.
Odin, I see there's a question for you in the chat. Wotan, I presume this is a pseudonym. What does it mean?
It's the Germanic word for Odin. It's a Germanic name of Odin. Yeah.
And that's the thing, man. I think there is definitely a shift happening, but I think it's not. It is events like this that slowly kind of red pill people, where they realize that, oh damn, we're actually up against. They're coming for you, Odin. I can hear it in the background.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think there's a shift happening where people are really starting to see through this shit, starting to see the left, the modern left, for the cult that it is. And I mean, this is cult-like behavior. We are so certain about something that is so demonstrably false and so easy to prove that it's false. But something else that I realized, and something else that came out of this whole thing, was the fact that you saw people circle the wagons, people that really got your back, man. You weren't just well, I mean, it wasn't that hard to get behind someone so viciously dunking on a on a person like that. But I mean, I thought support for you coming in from the strangest of places, or the most unexpected of places. I mean, the David Webb, the OG of actually black.
The original guy is mistaken for a white guy. That was amazing.
Yeah, him weighing in as well. Yeah, man. So Mr. Worldwide, it seems.
Mr. Worldwide, yeah.
I see.
She's. It's probably all the booze I've been bootlegging. Like, they've probably figured it out. Like, damn,
you're leaving too much of a paper trail, man.
So you always get taken down eventually. That's I mean, it happened to Al Capone. It'll happen to Wotan Capone. I'll just look more stylish as I go down. But yeah.
Also, something that I just wanted to show off before we continue. Let me just see. I've already sent you this. Let's see if I can get it on the screen. Here we go. Actually, very interesting. I have my own merch now that is available in the description. You can find a link to it there. I'm really glad that I can just have something. If you really want to buy it, that's cool. I don't need the money to survive, so I'm not gonna beg people to buy it. But if you think it's this looks cool and you'd wear this to be very very unique in regards to your choice in style, go check it out. There's also a mug with my logo and slogan on it. So I think that's pretty cool. You can join me for big mug energy.
Big mug energy. I'll get I'm just got a normal tumbler at the moment, but I'll join you on that big mug energy.
Yeah, dude. So something else. I think we can get into this early because I wanted to get to this somewhere in the chat, but you were on the Colonel's channel a while back, Mr. What's
Chris Wyatt?
Chris Wyatt, yeah, Mr. Chris Wyatt, Colonel Wyatt. And you had a very interesting chat there. You seem to know a lot more about Botswana than the average South African does.
Yeah, I mean, but the man's ex-military intelligence, army intelligence, as far as I remember. And so, there's something to be said there. But he is, aside from that, he's clearly a man with a genuine sort of passion for Africa, especially South Africa, Southern Africa, and Botswana. So yeah, he knew a lot. Really, it was quite impressive.
Yeah, I enjoyed your chat. And then you were on the Manpatria podcast as well. I haven't finished listening to that. I've been quite busy over the weekend, but it's on my list. But something that you guys got into at the very start of that show that I think is very relevant is where you started off the show with pretty much making some stereotypical jokes, joking and making light of stereotypes. And
Right.
before I continue, I see one of our faithful viewers and good friend Quentin Ferreira is in the chat. Good evening, pale brethren. Yeah, solid oak, solid oak. So yeah, and you guys were chatting about pretty much joking around about stereotypes, but that made me think that is actually the cure. That is how we fight these types of negative use of stereotypes, as Bianca did, is by going back to, if I can almost say, back to our roots as South Africans. I mean, there used to be a day when we were able to laugh at ourselves. We were able to joke about ourselves and not take ourselves so seriously. And I think if we can bring back being able to laugh at ourselves, not just, and then we won't take ourselves so seriously, and a lot of this petty, childish outrage will fade away. What are your thoughts on that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, if I can extrapolate, I know a lot of guys that have served in the military and that sort of thing, and and having gone to boarding school myself, there's a certain camaraderie you develop where, sort of pretty much nothing's off limits, and you say some pretty messed up jokes to each other, but that ability to really joke with each other and sort of diffuse stressful situations, but also learn about each other more sort of casually, I think is a critical thing that's been taken away from us, or that we've allowed to be taken away as a society in South Africa. And the ability to say, I mean, I make jokes about, white people and not being able to play basketball and stuff all the time, or like if one of my mates or if I walk in late, well, when we still went to offices, if I walk in late to like a dev meeting, somebody will be like, some sort of African time joke. But it's stuff like that sort of diffuses high stress situations. Whereas if we're not allowed to joke about anything or sort of explore anything, we're stuck in these little silos and the tension builds up. And
I see sideline opinions in the chat says that we have become far too sensitive. PC political correctness has killed humor, nicknames, and storytelling. And I mean, that's such a critical component to male camaraderie, is that type of joking. I think it serves a very, I think there's a reason why in male circles you get this type of very like sharp joking, is the fact that it gives you a thick skin. I think it serves a very valuable purpose. There's a reason why we do it. You mock or you do jabs at your mates, not because you hate them or want to cut them, but you kind of want to toughen them up, that the next time that someone actually throws an insult their way and with the intention to cut them, it just bounces off because they're made of steel.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, guys are always messing with each other. We're always testing each other, just enough, not beyond the pale, but just enough, to sort of push to each other to that limit, and we need that.
Yeah, I think it's very healthy, and not just focusing on male friendships. I think it's in society at large. If groups and cultures and languages can joke about each other and can make light of stereotypes, I think that it just destroys so much of the tension. It shows that, well, it's the good faith that comes with it, where it's not just that you have the luxury of being able to joke about other groups but you don't like it when they do it to you. It's being able to make light of trivial things, and then allowing that they can make light of your culture as well, or your traditions or whatever. I think it's very healthy. I think it is, and that's why I use that metaphor of the bro friendships that you have, where it actually serves a very healthy purpose. So, you need to. It creates an understanding between individuals and between groups that I'm not doing this to try and cut you or to try and hurt you in any way. It's just banter.
Yeah, but I mean, anyone you stick with.
It's like the banter you have between mates that support different football clubs.
Yeah, let's not talk about football at the moment. I'm still hurting from last night. It's just it was a tough night for United last night. I may have gotten a little angry. May have sent some rage tweets. I may have gotten salty. I see the goose climbed in on me. Bulek climbed in on me. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I'm going to bed now.
But yeah, man, I see here the Pet Zoo film crew says the size of greatness of any friendship are measured by the art of mockery. No place for snowflakes. I think you wholeheartedly agree, Odin.
Yeah, 100%, man.
And here's another one from Sideline Opinions. Like school derbies or provincialism, Grey versus PRG, or Stormers versus Blue Bulls, or Carpenars versus Transfaalers. Yeah, the Carpenars versus Transfaalers thing goes a bit farther than banter sometimes.
Yeah, it's a little bit further than banter. Yeah.
And I see, I mean, the chat seems to be agreeing quite a bit. Conscious or Carrie van Skalkwyk says, Conscious Character, it's actually a sign of good friendship and intimacy. Yeah, it's being able to trust your friends with that type of trust between friends, where we're not just going to have this patting on the back fest where we're just going to tell each other how great we are. It actually is a sign of robustness of your friendship and your relationship with someone, that you can tease each other and mock each other. And but all in good faith. It's just banter, as I like to say.
Yeah, pretty much. Although I have to say, Carrie van Skalkwyk, I'm going to assume you're like an 18 to 35-year-old white woman based on the color of the skin of the glass you're holding and that you're holding champagne. And I say 18 to 35 because 18 to 35-year-old white women love that sort of sunset glass of wine, like aesthetic in their profile pictures. And I bet you she has like a picture on her Insta that's her last vacation, and it's titled "Take Me Back." Like, I don't know why 18 to 35-year-old white women would love that shit. I do not know why. You can tell me. But anyway.
But see, it's that type of banter. Quentin also says good-natured ball breaking fosters social bonds. Absolutely. And I see here as well, I'm also a fun sale Lazan, so your username is quite amusing. These types of jokes keep you real and humble, she says. Today's snowflakes can't handle being wrong or be differ on. And that's the thing. That's when it comes to comedy. I think the good comedy always has a butt of the joke. There's always someone or something being joked about. The comedy has this inherent thing about offense in it, that there is always a target. There's always someone that's being made fun of or something being made fun of. But the beauty of comedy is that it's not focused on one person or one group. It's everyone gets the bat. Everyone gets a slap now and then from the comedians.
Exactly.
That's the type of comedy I grew up with. A show like South Park is a good example, where no one is safe. No group is sacred.
Exactly.
That was the good type of comedy, that the staple that I grew up with in terms of funny comedy shows and movies. And today, I don't remember the last time a new film came out that really broke my
I don't think there is. Aside from like Dave Chappelle's recent comedy specials, that's about it. Like the Dave Chappelle's comedy recently, that's pretty solid.
Odin, you got a response. Gary says, that is a great compliment. Thank you. I do love champagne, beautiful places, and I'm white, but 35 plus. Quite a bit of that.
Okay. I at least got one thing right there. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Sideline Opinion says, I will tell my best friend if he bought an expensive shit. Looking shirt instead of lying to him. Yeah, no, exactly, man.
You can send your friend to me, bro. I will teach him the style guide. Like, I need to start teaching y'all how to dress again, because some of the things I've seen y'all wearing is just deplorable, guys. Come on, gotta try harder.
So if this is your first time you're tuning into a Conscious Character or Wotan crossover episode, I always bring up Wotan's law, which states that if you ever go out to a public space with Mr. Odin Moja, you will always look like a homeless person in comparison to how he dresses. That is just.
Look at this for Windsor.
It's a law of nature. It's a law of nature, like the speed of light. You can't change it.
Let me put it to you this way. See, my pocket square matches the inside pattern. You can probably see it here. Inside pattern trim of my jacket. That's how on point I keep it. So yeah.
So before we went live, you actually you revealed to me that you have a little bit of a optical illusion going on there with your tie. It is actually not a white tie.
No, it's light blue. Actually, I don't know why it looks
a black tie.
It's actually a black tie. I don't know why it looks like that. It's probably the lighting, but it's actually like a light blue. So I don't know. Yeah.
It's not a Botswana blue though.
No, it's not a bots blue. Not quite. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Moja? Defrater Watch says real men don't wear plaid.
I'm not wearing plaid. This is polka dot. Are you saying I'm wearing plaid? Real men wear whatever they want, though. I reckon, like, wear whatever you want. Honestly, like if Terry Crews was wearing like the pinkest, tightest shirt ever, and then like bright neon green shorts, I'd be like, look, whatever, nigga. Like, you could bench press me for breakfast. I'm not gonna say a damn thing about what you're wearing.
The Pet Zoo Film Crew says a mockery freed men to actually have emotions in this century. A previous century was all John Wayne walk and taking bullets. I don't know.
That's actually a good
point.
Point.
Offense to that, or do you think that's seeing as your affinity for guns does factor into your identity?
I do have an affinity for guns. That's actually a good point. Yeah, it's because it did provide a certain conduit for certain emotions. I think so. I think if we had to go a couple of generations back to our like great grandfathers, it'd be a different sort of situation.
And here it seems that's right. Real men wear what they want. Cat says
that being
dapper swashbuckler.
That being said, I mean, come on. If you had to choose such, but I mean, that being said, if you had to, but maybe like you said, we'll get into this in a minute. It's a genetic thing for me. I've always got to be stunting. If you look on my ancestors, it's a genetic thing.
Oh man, I love this. It's a pigment of your imagination. That's actually a pretty good reply you could have sent Bianca as well.
Yeah.
It's the pigment of your imagination.
That's damn. Lost opportunity there.
So maybe something else that we can get into is actually the science of banter. So I put this in the description. But Odin, you need to explain. I mean, you need to give us some insight into the secrets of how you can constantly just dunk on people, but just you never miss, dude. In my opinion, your dunks are always rock solid, and it's not like you have to delete tweets that you're ashamed of. You thought that one didn't land, or you're like, oh man, guys, sorry, I failed you. My perfect record's done. You're just taking the W's, bro, and dishing out L's. What's your secret, man? What's the essence of the Wotanism? Where does the
it's pure Tswana genetics. Was it the goose called me Ubermensch? No, honestly, I think it just comes from my brother and I. We were always just riffing on each other back and forth, and he's just. I think if you get into that practice of always having to be on your guard to make little jokes and quips, and eventually you land it. Also, I'm like 5'10", so I have to be at least funny because I'm not 6 foot. So to get in there with the ladies, got to be at least kind of funny. So yeah.
Yeah, man, that makes sense. Robert Dagon makes a very interesting point in the chat. He says, chaos makes people insecure, insecurity makes people sensitive, and sensitive men have itchy trigger fingers. I can't agree more. But yeah, dude, that's the thing, is that these types of eras don't last forever. I mean, that's, I think, the big problem, or not the big problem. I'm thinking in Afrikaans again. The big mistake that people make nowadays is that they think we live in some unique time where now, I mean, I've made my fair share of 1984 references myself, but a lot of people think like we're living in this dystopia now. Jokes have never been this risky. Well, back in the day, we used to have things like this as well. I mean, there was the more puritanical movement in the 1980s, or like the Satanic Panic, or any type of movement where people were protesting outside the venues where the Sex Pistols were performing, people burning Harry Potter books, people saying, quite funny that cancel culture has come for J.K. Rowling now.
People.
I mean, but yeah, dude, and I don't think it's a new phenomenon. It's just that we are living now through a resurgence of it. But it's one of the phases that human culture goes through. You go through these types of purity spirals, and then in the end, it eats itself like a Ouroboros. So I don't think this is going to last forever. This is just pretty much for me, just more. It just substantiates my prediction more that we're close to a paradigm shift where this can't go on forever. I think it's going to burn out, and then we're going to have a new type of paradigm where we might get a renaissance in comedy. We might get a renaissance in regards to joking about things that used to be very controversial. But that's the thing, is that when you look back, a lot of people, especially leftists, when they look back at the ages of comedy in the past, they say, well, look at all these like evil jokes and these racist or bigoted or sexist jokes or whatever, as if those people living in that time consciously made the decision of, I'm going to make this joke just to keep whoever's the butt of the joke down, or I'm going to do it to specifically cut this group. I want to cut them down to size, as if that person wasn't just making a joke because it was funny. And I think attributing this type of malice to the past using today's moral standard is a very dangerous path to go down.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to your whole point of a paradigm shift, I tend to agree that there will be a shift. But here's my high-level take on this, because I watched a PSA Sitch video where he made a similar point. Right now, the authoritarians, the people who want to shut down free speech, are ironically more on the left. They're acolytes of the left, despite having in the past just recently been the ones for free speech, right? And their authoritarians on the left are speaking out and crushing everything they don't like. My prediction is there will be a paradigm shift, probably a renaissance in comedy and all that. But what will happen, and I think there's a good chance this will happen, is that the authoritarians on the right are right now pushing for free speech because they do not have control of the media and the narrative and all that. But I have no doubt in my heart that were the same level of power given to the right now, I'm not saying all of them, but I think suddenly the authoritarians on the right would come out of the woodwork and they would do much the same thing as the authoritarians on the left. So just be wary that not everyone on your side who is parroting for free speech truly believes in it. I think that regardless of where in the political spectrum you lie, there are authoritarians who are, if you're on the right now, who are parroting free speech because it suits them now, and they do not have the power.
Well, I don't think your prediction is that far-fetched. That's pretty much the story of human history that you just described there. It always is. There's a side that's the establishment, and there's a side that is then inherently the counterculture. The counterculture is the cool, hip, but in the genuine sense, not in the corporate, like artificial sense, like genuinely you're rebellious, you're rebelling against the system, you're raging against the machine, not with the machine, as you so eloquently put it. But then eventually in that culture war, the counterculture eventually most of the time wins, as that new younger generation replace their predecessors and are put into positions of power. But as soon as they are put into positions of power, they become just as corrupted by it as their predecessors who were the victors of the previous culture war. It's just the endless cycle of humanity, Odin. That's how it's just, from what I've seen, from what I've read in regards to not just South Africa, from every country. That's how it goes, is that the underdogs kind of win the sympathy of the crowd. They get their support. They especially the young people, they replace the establishment. And then you get to a point where they also become tempted by power. I mean, it's very interesting to see a lot of leftists in America crying about some of the more leaning authoritarian policies that Donald Trump uses in terms of, for example, surveillance. But these are not policies that he introduced. These were policies that were introduced under Obama.
That's what I was going to say. Who introduced these policies? I mean, I get why you would not want to give that, why you would not like Trump having emperor-like powers. But if you didn't like Trump having emperor-like powers, you shouldn't have spent 8 years giving emperor-like powers to the office of the president, because the levers of power eventually change hands.
Yeah, because you were naive enough to think that your side was going to be in power forever. And that's the danger, man. It's that, let's say you're taking part in a sport. Like, let's say okay, let's make it a very interesting example. Let's say you start a fight club, but your rules are you can only use your fists, no weapons allowed. And then one day, one guy says, "But guys, why is this a bit boring? But I'm the best fighter here, but I want to test my mettle with weapons as well. So let's allow some knives in the fight." And then he allows knives because he thinks he's the best knife fighter there. But then one day, another guy comes in, younger, stronger than him, uses a knife and dethrones him or takes his place as the best fighter there. You just fell victim to the very rule bending that you introduced. And that's the big thing, is that it's that assumption of as soon as you allow bringing a gun to a fist fight, you are doing it on the assumption that you're always going to be the guy with the gun.
Exactly. I mean, to put it bluntly, just in terms of, and this goes back to the whole concept of the American president and levels of power. I don't think there's many non-Americans or Americans who can name me more than 5 presidents between Abraham Lincoln and like Calvin Coolidge. And that's not just because of a lack of historical knowledge. Yeah, I had to bring up Calvin Coolidge because I'm in this Calvin Coolidge stat. So our boy Calvin Coolidge, him and Grover Cleveland, shout out to the greats. Put them on Mount Rushmore. So like, there's not a lot of people who could name maybe more than 5 presidents between like Calvin Coolidge and Abraham Lincoln. And yes, it speaks partially to a lack of historical knowledge, but also more importantly, it speaks to, in that time period, the president was so depowered. The size of the state, the level of power was so small that it almost didn't matter who was president. So even if your side, quote unquote, didn't win, it's kind of like, yeah, this is a guy in Washington, who cares? I can keep doing my thing. And that's kind of the way it should have been kept. But, we wanted more stuff. And so we expanded. And this isn't just unique to the United States. It's just the United States is the easiest, example of that. Well,
in South Africa, the ANC still utilizes a lot of laws brought in under apartheid, which I find interesting. I see here in the chat, Offense says, my liberal colleague got offended that I jokingly called her strong and independent. Needless to say, I stopped calling her that. Yet it's perfectly okay for her to mock how I like Donald Trump. Well, that's a story I hear too often.
It's not particularly...
It's like a typical story of our zeitgeist and of our time.
Yeah.
And I see I've been neglecting the chat a little bit.
Yeah, let's
what's been going on. So then also I see Marubane or Robert Dagon says, anytime shit looks bad, remember it can always get worse.
I want to know why he's got that ant zombie picture as his profile picture.
He explained it on. So I had him on the show recently, and he actually explained it. But if you guys are curious, you can go check out that interview and go check it out for yourself on why it is. Give you a little bit of a teaser. Going to leave you on a cliffhanger there. I see Sideline Opinion says, then we can get along. Oh, wait, he was responding to someone else. Another comment by Robert. It's about policing group loyalty. If you want to assert a monopoly on opinion, you need to make sure nobody even jokes about your noble and sacred cows. Yeah, well, that's another pattern that we've seen across history. It's not something new. As I always say on this channel, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a question for me. Conscious Caracal, it's like accepting the current constitution based on a benevolent Mandela and complain when it's abused by Zuma or Ramaphosa. Well, yeah. A point that Ernst Roots makes quite a lot is the fact that the majority of South Africans would say that the South African constitution holds all the power in South Africa, but he says that's wrong. The person interpreting the constitution holds all the power. Because there's many ways you can interpret the Constitution. I mean, the Constitution, like I pointed out in my debate, the communitarian versus individualist debate, and when I was on Germ's channel, someone in the chat also took me on about it. So they told me, like, just read the Constitution. It's perfect. Like, check it out. Everything is there. It's so good.
It's going to work.
Yeah, it looks pretty good on paper, but unfortunately,
on paper,
man. We live in a world of brick and mortar and blood and bone.
Yeah.
and that's why I find it funny. I think the best way to sum up the ideological difference or the approach to policy and approach to politics between liberals and conservatives or community orientated people, or let's keep it at conservatives and liberals, is the fact that liberals are utopian in the fact that they get lost in the theory. They look at what looks great on paper, what is a beautiful story. While conservatives look more at, but what are the results? Someone summed it up perfectly for me the other day on Twitter, but not even more in a way of kind of trying to point out a flaw in my logic, where he said, I can't remember what the topic was, but he told me.
I mean, honestly, your whole thing is like the more liberals end of the spectrum is looking at the girl's sort of Tinder profile. She looking fire. You have a good chat. Everything looks great. The conservative end of the profile is, okay, but I want to actually meet her because she might be a fire 9 out of 10. And she also might be a 50-year-old dude waiting to harvest my kidneys. Like, you gotta, like, that's the conservative end of the sector.
That's perfect, man. That's an absolute perfect summation of it. So, yeah, this guy said, I see where the difference in opinion comes in here. I'm looking at how things could be, and you're looking at what the consequences were. I'm like, yes, that's exactly it. They're like that meme of yes.
Yes.
Like, I don't care about the beautiful story, man. I don't care about the theory. I want to see what happens. It's that type of business logic of you can come to me with the best business idea ever, where people are like, just, yeah, dude, that business is going to be fire. And then you implement it and nobody buys your product. And then you're baffled as to why. So I always say the proof is in the pudding. I look at reality. I look at what happens. I'm a guy of looking at the world and looking what happens. And I mean, you coming from an AI perspective, isn't this a debate that kind of relates to your field of expertise as well, where people get lost in the ideals of theory without really focusing enough on the implementation?
Yeah, actually, I guess that is one way to put it. I mean, there's a lot of theories that we still haven't really figured out the logical extreme end of in AI, and yeah, things remain to be seen.
But I think seeing as we've referenced history so much, and we are already 3/4 of the way through the show, do you have a historical event that you would like to analyze as we head into the final quarter of the show, or an event that you think is worthy of giving attention and discussion?
Worthy of attention. I mean, we already discussed Maromong on the last episode of the...
Let me ask you this then. What other battle in World War I or II really stands out to you as something very powerful?
Specifically to my culture, or just in general?
Just personally.
I think for me personally, the one battle that actually two battles. First of all, the first battle would be what they call the Battle of the Frontiers in the First World War, in that it was the initial sort of meeting of all the world powers, and you still had the French going to war in sort of uniforms that, by the way, my biggest pet peeve is people like the French are surrender monkeys and all that. Anyone who says that, it's such a dead giveaway that you know very little about military history. It's almost hilarious. But anyway, there was a lot of those clashes, especially between the Germans and the French. And the French were still going to war in uniforms that were almost Napoleonic in design. There's very little difference. And you still had officers standing up in the middle of whittling machine gun fire and cannon fire, just like commanding their men. I'm like, dude, it's not the 1800s anymore. You're in,
that was the old paradigm.
Yeah, that was the old paradigm, and it showed how much time. And it wasn't just them, but I was just reading from one of the diaries from them. It just shows how bad. Like, they were telling how young men would just stand and they get shot, and they'd stand up again, and you'd have body parts hanging off them, and they'd still advance, and officers still waving their sabers. I'm like, it seems almost insane to me that to us, that you would wage war like that, but they still had that old paradigm. But I mean, the French really bled to slow down the advance of the Germans. And then the other battle that that I guess with the First World War, because I really quite a geek about that, is the Battle of the Marne, the first Battle of the Marne.
Before you continue, I segued into this topic specifically because I promised Odin that on the next time we chat, we're going to have a little bit of a historical flavor to the episode. Because when me and him hang out, or Bri, we always talk about history, and I thought it would be very interesting if we actually have an episode where we have an audience listening to us discussing it. But anyway,
there's a question about AfriForum and the Botswana government. I'll answer that in a second.
I'll also get to that at the end. But yeah, dude, finish your battlefield story. And
the Battle of the Marne, the first Battle of the Marne, is sort of seen as this miracle on the Marne, and it was like this miraculous just stopping of the Germans, because the Marne was a critical battle in the Schlieffen Plan, and the Schlieffen Plan was a plan come up with by Alfred von Schlieffen, he was the chief of the German military up until, I think, a good 20 years before the First World War, 15 years before the First World War broke out. And the whole Schlieffen Plan was, okay, we need to knock out the French early so we can focus on the Russians, because we don't want a war on two fronts, and we all know how that ended. And the thing for me is that people have this weird idea that the Marne victory for the French was such a miracle. They called it the miracle on the Marne. And I'm like, actually, strategically, if you look at it, the amount of communications that the Germans ran out of, as you got closer to the front, they didn't have telephones anymore. They were literally relying on pigeons. The Schlieffen Plan relied almost entirely on precise, it's so German, like the whole plan relied precisely on hundreds of troops being moved to this position in the battlefield by this time, and then and only then it'll work. And the whole Schlieffen Plan just fell apart at the Marne because it was so inflexible and so like they're like, this is my favorite battle that shows you like what happens. What is it? It's an example of one of my favorite saying by Helmut von Moltke the Elder, also a Prussian officer, who said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. Well, you should have had a backup plan for the Schlieffen Plan, but yeah.
I see Offense says, Marubane, I binged on your videos last Friday during work hours. Time well spent, if you ask me. Keep the vids coming, please. Yeah, I can give my seal of approval as well. Robert Dagon has a very, very high quality aesthetic channel where he goes through different dispensations of South Africa. Really nice. And I mean, this links up to the theme of this episode, it seems, the unplanned theme of knowing your history. And I think his videos do a pretty good job of giving you the overall perspective in regards to the country that you live in and how we got here, seeing as we are what our past has made us. So I can definitely endorse his videos. I think you can go check it out for yourself. They are not very short videos. They are between 10 to 15 minutes. So make yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and enjoy it. But yeah, definitely think you should go check it out and recommend it. Yeah, man, I always find it fascinating when you enlighten me on World War I or World War II battles, because I have to admit, not that clued up on battles specifically. I know a lot about the history surrounding the wars and the politics of the time. But the specific military history still is a bit lacking in regards to my knowledge. I've got a bunch of books that I need to read on it. But as I prefer, when I read books, I like to read by theme. So for example, if I want to start reading up on World War I or World War II battles, I'll read like 3 or 4 books in a row on it. So I'll maybe get to it one day. At the moment, still brushing up a little bit on my South African history, because I think that's the best weapon you can have against the propagandists today.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe to get into that story that was asked in the chat. I can't remember who asked it. Someone asked about AfriForum's Botswana case. Let me just see if I can get that article.
I love that they ask that when I'm on the stream. Like I'm Botswana's personal PR agent in South Africa.
They know. All right, so this was in June. AfriForum advocate Harry Nell, who, according to some propagandists on Twitter, some people that really just hate AfriForum, apparently doesn't work for AfriForum, and has never done a case for AfriForum, to quote them. But he seems to be doing a lot of fake cases, it seems. Advocate Garinel to represent with the Botswana government in money laundering and fraud case. So here we have AfriForum today announced that its private prosecution unit under the leadership of Advocate Garinel has officially been appointed by the Botswana government to represent the government in a high-profile money laundering and fraud case in which businesswoman Bridget Motsepe Radebe is implicated. Motsepe Radebe is the sister-in-law to President Cyril Ramaphosa and wife of Jeff Radebe. So this is very interesting. I'll put the link in the chat if you want. I'm not going to read the whole story, but yeah, this is ongoing. We don't have an update for you yet in regards to where this is going. The court date is still it still needs to happen, but a lot of things happening behind the scenes. So I'm just going to put.
I can sort of give an update from Botswana side because it was an article.
Awesome.
Where
so I
they
put the link in the chat if anyone wants to read the entire thing. But Mr. Moja, please enlighten us.
Yeah, actually, Chris Wyatt again. He did a great video on this. I need to compliment him on that. There was some article about Botswana lawyers are up in arms about AfriForum about the government going to AfriForum. So there's a couple of things to unpack there, and I won't go into too much detail because I think Chris's video does this better. But first of all, the reason the government went to AfriForum is because the government was dealing with the government of South Africa repeatedly, and the government of South Africa did absolutely nothing. Okay, the government of South Africa was like, to this case, what Ringo Starr was to the Beatles. Like, I mean, yeah, technically he's there, but I mean, come on. Anyway, so and so they went for private prosecution because, to hell with going to SADC, they're not going to do anything, and neither is the African Union. So they're like, okay, fine, I'm going to go to AfriForum. And then the other point that kind of annoyed me in this is that they said Botswana lawyers. It's like, okay, the guy who actually was up in arms is like the vice chair of the law society in Gaborone or something like that. So I guess, yes, he's an important lawyer, but they made it sound with the headline and with the wording of the article like all these lawyers signed this 500 lawyer letter saying, no, don't go to Africa. Like, no, it's one dude who took it personally.
Typical propaganda tactic. I mean, I have a video on my channel about it happening in South Africa with the South African media putting the same trick. I think it was in 2018 where two farmers or one farmer, I can't remember. I think it's two because that made them get away with it. So two farmers that they interviewed said like when Donald Trump tweeted about South Africa in 2018 and said land grabs and farm murders are happening here. News 24, not News 24 specifically, they quoted from someone else, but one of these news outlets found two farmers that they interviewed. And these farmers said, we don't care what Donald Trump thinks. He doesn't know what's going on in South Africa. We don't appreciate his tweet, two guys. And the headline was, South African farmers condemn Donald Trump, say he needs to go to hell. One farmer said he needs to go to hell. So, I mean, that's the same trick, very same trick. It's a very classic thing to do from propagandists, and it's effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, sorry to Lula Moon. When a Wotanism starts rolling, it's like a rocket ship. You can't stop it. Ringo's probably an okay guy. I just like riffing on him.
But yeah, dude, I see here is actually a war-related comment for you, Mr. Moja. Stuart Campbell.
The Russian front collapsed first.
I'll just read it for anyone that's not watching.
Okay. So what happened was when he says that, I assume.
I'm just going to read the comment for anyone that's listening and not watching the show so they know what we're going to respond to. So Stuart Campbell says, unfortunately, Odin, the Russian front collapsed first, and it never helped the Germans on the Western in any meaningful way. It may have prolonged the inevitable. So what's your response to that?
Okay, so there's a couple of things there. The inevitable. Doubtful. I think the Germans came closer to winning the First World War than the Second. But those are two different groups of Germans entirely. So first of all, the Schlieffen plan was to go through it. Partially, it involved going through, I believe, the Netherlands, because they also went through through Belgium. The plan on the Western Front was to sort of do this hammer and wall sort of tactic. So the solid defenses on the Western Front against France, and then you've got this flanking sweeping group that comes up behind the French and just crushes them in this pincer movement. And then the Western Front, there was no real plan. It was just to sort of hold them there. So the thing with the Western, yes, the Russians did collapse, but that was partially because of the whole revolution they had at the time. That didn't help their war things. Was it inevitable? I tend not to agree with it. I'm with the historians that say things like the Spring Offensive of 1918 showed that the Germans could still have won it. I think that the Austrians weren't great allies. But I mean, the Spring Offensive, I mean, you had the British High Command, you know, by a couple of days into the Spring Offensive saying, holy shit, we've lost the war. You know, they were talking about suing for peace. The Kaiser was like, hell yeah, we're going to have they covered immense amounts of ground. The Spring Offensive proved that things like German stormtrooper tactics, which, you know, sort of got developed in the Second World War, could work. I think the reason that it didn't, and I tend to agree that the reason it didn't ultimately work is that they had a lot of tactical objectives, but no real strategic objectives. So you'd have instances where units would just completely outrun their supply lines and then capture this sort of lightly defended but critical tactical point. And then they're like, okay, so what do we do with it? And High Command, which takes forever to come back to you, is like, we don't know. So are you supposed to tell men to die for this maybe valuable tactical objective? No. So I think the biggest thing is that it was totally possible for the Central Powers to win, but they lacked every time you saw the Central Powers on the offensive, they lacked the real knowledge of which critical strategic objectives to take. I mean, there was the one time early in the war where they marched literally past Paris. They were looking at the Eiffel Tower in the distance because they wanted to press the British so badly. So, you know, I don't think it was inevitable. I think there was still a small chance or significant chance they could have won. It's just they fumbled here and there.
I don't know. I see people have discovered your source of knowledge in the chat. Kakarot says Dan Carlin, Hardcore History, did an excellent podcast on World War One.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
But as Albert Einstein said, creativity is the art of hiding your sources.
Well, it's not just Dan Carlin I listen to, but he's my favorite. Yeah.
So I see the Pet Zoo film crew says, Rooikat, nou dat jy so ou gat jou framing reg kry op horizontal, experimenteer met vertical, gaan jou en 'n guest nader aan jou audience bring. Onthou met die chat kyk was kleiner. All right, so he's basically saying that I need to start experimenting with a different type of view. So at the moment we are in this vertical view, and then you can also do this. Yeah. So if you guys prefer this type of view, press 1. If you prefer the traditional, if you're a traditionalist in the conscious clerical show sense, press 2 for the traditional view. But
yes, the entry of the Americans did swing things, but honestly, the Germans could have cinched that in 1916 before the Americans entered. But yes, sorry, continue.
No, I'm just asking the audience to vote on what type of view they support. So if you like this more close and intimate, where we can count our beard hairs, press 1, and if you are more of a traditionalist, then you can press 2 for this view, just to see. Interesting. All right. So Odin, seeing as we've reached the near end of our show now, just maybe some final thoughts in regards to where can people find you? What are you up to recently, and where are your talents being used?
My talents, mostly making jokes on the internet. So you can find me at WotanZA. I think most people in the chat have probably followed me at some point at WotanZA. I guess in terms of content, at noscriptshow.com or at noscriptshow on Twitter, we output the links, and it's basically it's tech podcast, a little politics, a little bit of theoretical physics every now and then. And it's just me and me and Aaron, me and Duran, just having a good time, just talking.
Nice, dude. I see you got a shout out from Mr. Adams Root on Ronaldo Gos's show last night as well.
Oh yeah. I was actually busy watching United lose at that time, so it was I was unaware of that.
Little bit of a cheer up, man. So it seems like the ones have completely taken it. But I see a very, very good suggestion here from Larzo Slice, who says, start the show with a long shot and move to the close up as things intensify. All right. I'll play around with it. Thanks very much for the feedback, guys. This is just another example of the interaction between creator and people tuning in. It's so great, man. It distinguishes this type of alternative media from the mainstream. It's like these types of inputs is invaluable to me, man. It makes the show better. Especially a lot of the questions coming in also helps make the show better. It seems like my microphone is trying to run away. So let me just fix this here. All right, I think that's better. No, it seems like my microphone has had enough. It wants to end the show. But yeah, Mr. Moja, thank you very much for coming on. Excellent chat. I always enjoy your company. We need to have a bribe very soon again, though. It's been too long already. And also, thank you very much for everyone that tuned in. If you are not familiar with Mr. Moja's work, you can go find a link to his Twitter in the description, but also a link to his podcast website where I sometimes make an appearance, so you can go check that out. And also, if you weren't here when I announced the new merch that is available for my channel, you can find the link in the description as well for if you want a hoodie or a mug. I think it's pretty cool. I like the fact that people can have something unique like that. But please don't feel obligated to do it. Like I said, I'm not in the need of the money. It's just
honestly, he's too humble. You're too humble, my friend. Honestly, I bought a Conscious Caracal hoodie, and suddenly, literally everybody on Tinder matched with me. Literally everyone. And then the next day, hot moves in my area, they all just showed up. By the way, it's amazing. Just buy the hoodie, and your life will change for the better.
Thanks, man. And I see so people are giving their feedback on the show. Carrie says, thanks, Conscious Caracal. Thanks, Wotan. I enjoy the chat. See you again. Enjoy the rest of your week, gents. Enjoy the rest of your week as well, Carrie. I see a loyal watcher, Defrader watcher that's always here, says, thanks, Conscious Caracal, for another great guest and interesting discussion. Thank you for tuning in and always being in the chat. I appreciate it. And Sideliner Opinions, one of the regulars here as well, says, see you had a haircut, CC, looking like a Transvaler again. Yeah, the hair was getting a bit out of control. I had to go back to basics, but it's a good thing. I see Stuart says, great show, Adams and Odin. Keep well and stay safe, everyone. Next discussion. The next discussion will be next week. I'm a bit busy this week with work, so I'm not going to have 2 episodes this week, but I will have a new guest lined up for next week for sure. If you are new to the channel and you're not familiar with my channel, I don't know how you found me, but you can subscribe as well if you want, if you like the content. Also leave a like. It helps out the show a lot. I see we're almost at 100 likes. Very cool. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for always making the show better by taking part in the chat. It sometimes distracts me so much that I lose track of the show itself and just get lost in the chat. So thank you very much for everyone that's stuck here from the beginning to the end. And then finally, thank you, Mr. Moja, for joining me and proving your identity once and for all in near crisp HD. I will definitely have you on in the future. All right. Cheers, guys. Have a good one. And Odin, Maya Saintle.
So, Maya Saintle.